Hi, thanks for watching. I'm going to talk today about the West Indies tour of New Zealand, which actually starts very soon. It's in about 2 weeks. That's despite the last test of the West Indies India series ending just yesterday, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. Well, I mean, to open with, can I pick no one? Neither of these teams have been covering themselves in glory recently. I'm going to spend the majority of this interview talking about the West Indies because two things. We talked a lot about New Zealand recently, haven't talked about the West Indies who haven't played Test cricket for a while. You might remember they didn't play any home test this year, something that I'm not at all a fan of. One day cricket, unfortunately, taking over that part of the world. It's another issue for another day. But so because they haven't played a top eight nation, especially for quite some time, they played Bangladesh and won 2 games against them. New Zealand, speaking of Bangladesh, also went to Bangladesh and drew 2 tests there, which is also a poor result. I mean, again, to not win a series against Bangladesh, no matter where it's played, for a top eight team is something that's very, very disturbing. And yeah, so we're looking at a bottom of the table clash. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But going to the West Indies in particular, as I mentioned, I'm quite disappointed in them. Um, I had hopes of the West Indies sort of coming along, and over the last 2 or 3 years, you could see that the development of Kemar Roach, for example, Sunil Narine on the fringes of the team coming through. Darren Bravo, who had done such great work in Asia, and in addition to stalwarts like Chanderpaul and Gale, look like the makings of a decent team. Well, I think that sort of idea has been obliterated with this series against India, and also this has been coming for a little while. Perhaps not as convincing as they should have been against the Kiwis back in West Indies. Again, the Bangladesh series was not decisive really. Darren Bravo's career had been going downhill for a while, even at a young age, and I think I spoke about his importance before that India series, and I think that this drove a stake through the idea that Darren Bravo was going to be an impact Test batsman. He may well end up being a Test class quality bat of the likes of say Sarwan, but the idea of this guy being, forget Lara, but like of being a 48 player, of being a really strong, you can build your card around this guy player, that's gone. And for the reasons that I mentioned in the India preview, he was set up to succeed. That didn't happen. Another guy that I've lost my patience with is Darren Sammy. Now, Michael Holding has this big Darren Sammy thing where he talks about Darren Sammy shouldn't be in the Test team, and for quite some time I've defended Darren Sammy, which might surprise some viewers, in that Sammy was, I thought, an excellent captain of what was a young team, which is important. We talked about the engineering of nearly a win in the last test of the previous Indian series in India. How his bowling was very economical. It was a sterling economy rate bowler, 2.85 for a fast bowler is excellent. Could bat, and those numbers were usually better than you thought. But I've lost patience with Darren Sammy now too, and I agree he needs to get out of this team. He was always riding on thin ice and relying on his captaincy skills to be there. Well, I don't think you could possibly look at that team that lost 2 tests so terribly against India and say that it was a world captain team that knew what it was going about. I mean, there was no toughness at all. I mean, they didn't grit anything out. They were throwing wickets away. Yesterday was a perfect example. Is that we saw them three down starting the day. They weren't going to win, of course, but they had a chance to tough it out. Lost 3 wickets in an hour. Not really good enough. So Darren Sammy's captaincy skills are out the window, and about his bowling, it's really terrible. It's worse than the numbers look actually. Outside of Bangladesh and Zimbabwe Test, Darren Sammy averages 39.58, and if you take out his debut Test, which took 7 for 66 against the Englishmen, not Bangladesh Zimbabwe, he averages 44.23. You can't average that in batter number 8. He's played 30 odd Test matches now. He's 29 years old. We know what he is. He shouldn't be playing. I agree with Michael Holding. Let's get him out. Let's get another player in. Kieran Powell, looking at this series, he'll be an important player because the new ball is such a huge weapon in New Zealand. Who do they have to blunt it and to hold their own against it? Kieran Powell's 23 years old, has shown perhaps some signs there. He's averaging 30, but again, Kane Williamson on the other side is, so it's not necessarily a horrible knock when you're that young, especially coming from the West Indies where he's going to get plenty of chances. But he has 1 century in 25 innings that aren't against Bangladesh. That was against the Kiwis, I guess, if looking at a silver lining. Although, obviously, in the more hospitable West Indian conditions for batting. The West Indies in general are not, well, they're a terrible team away from home. I mean, these two teams have been roughly sort of parity-ish over the last 3 years or so. West Indies maybe gave the illusion of being on the ascendancy, but West Indies have won one test against top 8 opposition, not named Bangladesh and New Zimbabwe, away from home since June of 2000. That's a record of 1 win, 14 draws, and 45 losses. They haven't won any of the 5 tests against New Zealand. They've drawn 2 and lost 3. That 2007 team still included guys like Grail and Chanderpaul, Samuels, Sammy if he plays here, Dinesh Ramdin. That's another problem with them. I'll talk about it some other time. Dinesh Ramdin. Yeah, looking at the New Zealand series back in the West Indies won them by 9 and 5 wickets. So I remember that as a really tight, tense series, but perhaps not quite as tight and tense as I had thought. 9 and 5 wickets, batting last, having to bat second both times, suggests a pretty good performance by the Windies. So maybe I'm being a little bit doom and gloom, but as you can tell, I've been very disappointed with their performance and have a very bleak outlook towards this series. Adding to that, Kemar Roach was really the difference between the sides. Took 6 wickets a match at 18.25. Reason why that adds to the bleak prognosis is that he is likely out for this series. He did not go to India. Roach is their best player at the moment by some distance. And obviously, again, New Zealand need your fast bowlers healthy and ready to go. And Tino Best and either Cottrell or I forget the guy's name, the other guy, Shannon Gabriel, is not going to scare anyone. Gale does have a good performance in New Zealand. Averages 67.5. Excuse me. Scores in 50% of his innings, which is very encouraging, and has a 1 century in 8 innings in 5 tests. So, again, silver linings there. Chris Gale could do some damage. He was the main architect of them drawing the series here last time. Looking at the New Zealand side of things for a relatively short period of time, I'm sorry for the New Zealanders, but I just want to get some of the stuff off the West Indies out of the way. The pace bowling attack is solid. Trent Boult, 3 wickets a match at 31.72. Wagner, 3.4 wickets a match at 36. And Southey, the real jewel in the crown, hopefully he's healthy, 3.9 wickets a match at 26.46. Those are numbers since January 1st of last year, and remember that includes quite a lot of cricket in Asia. Wagner, yeah, might not look too flash there, but I think, again, New Zealand conditions, they bring 3 probably test quality pace bowlers to the table. West Indies might bring none. Shannon Gabriel, Cottrell, who knows best, not good even in his prime and well past his prime now. That alone should be enough to account for the West Indians. If you looked at us, sorry to dwell on the West Indies a lot, but if you watch that India series, it's very rare you'll see 2 tests go by from a top 8 team and just show nothing with the bat. I mean, there was no positive signs that you could take out of that. Chanderpaul looked poor for the most part. So, you know, what possible answer could I give except for a 3-0 loss in this series? I'm just going to quickly check. Sorry about this. I'm just going to quickly check how many tests this is. But I can't see the West Indies winning any of them. Again, well, they've won 1 since 2000. So I think that, again, tells you quite a lot about what you need to know about this series. New Zealand have been solid-ish. I know the Bangladesh series was a disappointment, but you can isolate that. I mean, it's quite explicable why that wasn't so great. Again, the slow bowling problems, which shouldn't be an issue here. Whether they play Bruce Martin or Sodhi, I don't know. They shouldn't. They probably will. Mark Gillespie should be putting his hand up, and possibly some other youngsters. So Corey Anderson, I think it was, as well, potentially coming into that team. I'm just going to look at how many tests this actually is. I think it's a 3-test series. But yeah, I mean, the West Indies batting, there was just nothing there. And when there's nothing in your batting and you go to New Zealand, you've got nothing particularly at the top of the batting card. Chris Gale maybe. You're asking for trouble. Whereas New Zealanders, look, there's some silver linings there too. Kane Williamson, interesting, obviously, always. Hamish Rutherford, potentially interesting. Ross Taylor, everyone loves Chanderpaul, sure, but he's 39. When you put everyone's career into perspective, Ross Taylor's the best batsman in the series. New Zealand bat deeper than the West Indies, so the batting will not be gold quality from New Zealand. Will be better than the West Indies, and I'm picking them to win. Look, it's 3 tests. I just found out it's 3 tests. I'm going to say the weather interferes with one of them. It is New Zealand. We're going to go 2-0 to New Zealand, beating the West Indies. So thanks for watching.